watching Asia in Review, and I'm your host, David Day, and our guest this evening, all the way from Washington, D.C., will be Ms. Nicole Finneman. The title of our show this evening is called American Eyes Inside North Korea's Nuclear Program. This is an exclusive Think Tech special, and you're going to want to stay with us for the whole program here. Nicole Finneman, can you hear me all right?
I can. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Well, we deeply appreciate you taking time out of your hectic schedule right now. I'll explain to our viewing audience why your schedule is so hectic later on in this program. And ladies and gentlemen, Nicole Finneman is the Director of Research and Academic Affairs at the Korea Economic Institute. And in case you don't know, this is a very well-respected, highly thought-of think tank based in Washington, D.C., and it specializes in Northeast Asia and the Koreas. And interestingly, Ms. Nicole Finneman is I think fair to say, Nicole, the point person for North Korea for KEI. Am I correct?
With the exception of KEI's president, who's the Ambassador Pritchard, the former White House envoy to North Korea, I am in charge of all of KEI's North Korea work, research, affairs, etc.
One of the interesting things that Nicole has done as a result of her work with North Korea is develop a very, very fascinating and educational simulation involving the six-party talks, and we'll get to that later on in this program. But let's turn now to one of Nicole's advantages in the work that she does with KEI, and that is that she makes annual trips to North Korea and Pyongyang. And I understand, Nicole, that you had a recent trip to Pyongyang at in November of 2005, towards the end of the year. Am I correct?
Just this past November, correct. The first week of November 2010, myself and Ambassador Pritchard were in Pyongyang, as well as Yongbyon, North Korea.
Well, let's talk about Yongbyon, because my understanding of the timing of your visit is that you were actually several days ahead of Professor Siegfried Hecker of Stanford, who made the enormous explosive revelation on the global media about the progress of the North Korea nuclear program. You were into that facility ahead of Professor Hecker. Am I correct?
Indeed, that is absolutely correct. In fact, I'd like to just mention quickly how it works when one visits North Korea on invitation from the foreign ministry. Often the media misunderstands the fact that North Korea is not reaching out to its favored Americans to come and visit and to be shown these things. In fact, those of us on the U.S. side in a track 2 or track 1.5, sort of former government officials, we request to go to North Korea. So we essentially request through the New York channel, the UN mission, North Korea's UN mission there, we request an invitation from the foreign ministry to go. And so both in my delegation's trip and as well as the Stanford delegation that included Siegfried Hecker after us, we all sort of requested to go, and the only thing the North Koreans really manipulate is the timing. So what's interesting about this is they chose to show us Yongbyon.
Let me interrupt you, Nicole, for a second. You said one of the interesting things was they manipulated the timing. You referring to the timing of the visits?
I am. We had originally requested to go earlier in the fall. However, because of a lot of internal things going on, including Grand National Assembly meetings and celebrations, they actually delayed us to November.
I see. And so what is how did this visit to Yongbyon, the Yongbyon nuclear facility, how was this set up?
Well, prior to going, we submit, as we usually do every year, to New York a list of requested items, meetings that we would like to have with individuals, and site visits we would like to attend. However, as is true for all Americans, you never know what you're going to get until you arrive at your hotel in Pyongyang.
So
this year,
you requested access to the former nuclear facility under the assumption that it was still dismantled. Am I correct?
Right. Well, we ask to go to Yongbyon every year, never expecting that they will take us. And part of that is just to really push to get outside of Pyongyang to see part of the rest of North Korea. We expected to see a pretty much dismantled, non-functioning Yongbyon with the cooling tower that they exploded in 2008, very dramatically, still, non-existent in a completely dismantled facility.
Okay, was there, before you get into a description of what your eyes saw when you went into the North Korean nuclear facility at Yongbyon, what was the lead up in terms of the statements made by North Koreans to you, either on the way to that facility or were they excited to have you see it, or what can you tell us about their advanced marketing or PR for you to get inside of that very, very interesting place?
Mm-hmm. Very little, in fact. Most interactions in North Korea are very direct, and it was just very matter of fact. You're going to Yongbyon on Friday, and our reaction was okay. The ride there, although
Nicole, wait a second. Your reaction was okay?
Well, we have been requesting it every year, and it's something that we wanted. So we were certainly pleased to see it on our itinerary. Really very little change happened with regard to the visit, which happened at the end of our stay in North Korea. The last full day, I believe, yes.
All right, so how far is Yongbyon out of Pyongyang?
Well, traveling at about 120 kilometers an hour at least, which is what our driver took us there at. We made it in about just under 2 hours northeast. Yeah.
And when you arrived there, was there any kind of reception before you went inside the facility? Any kind of briefing at all?
Indeed. Well, first of all, Yongbyon is a thriving city. It's not small by any means, and I was rather taken aback by how many people live there. We originally, upon arriving, we drove through the town to what's very typical, and that is they bring you to the guest house, sort of a mini hotel, where we received a briefing on the activities that were going on in Yongbyon.
And when they do this briefing, are they showing you pictures or PowerPoint or video clips, or just somebody giving you a speech?
It's just a meeting. We met with the director of the Safeguards Division of Yongbyon's nuclear facility. Been working there for a very long time, and he gave us an overview of the activity that was going on. And so this was our first moment of genuine surprise to hear that North Korea was building a light water reactor.
Okay, now let me slow you down just a second. You met with the director of the Safeguards Division, and that was Mr. Lee Yong-ho, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so in that initial briefing while you're at the guest house, did he disclose to you the status of the building of the light water reactors?
What we learned in that meeting was partly what we expected, and that was that the 5-megawatt reactor, the graphite reactor, the one that we've all known about for quite a while that uses plutonium, was in fact disabled or not in function.
Okay, so
and that is something.
No surprises there then.
Nope, no surprises there. However, within that compound, not very far, maybe 100 yards or so from where the cooling tower had been, they had begun construction about 40 days prior on a light water reactor. And that was what he explained to us in the meeting, saying that this is what you're about to go see.
So the disclosure to you was that the construction commenced 40 days prior to your eyes arriving at that facility. Did I understand you correctly?
So, yep, and we were there right when visible signs of it being a light water reactor. It was probably about one day in to being able to tell from satellite imagery what it was. So until this point, the construction, the media had been reporting on construction at Yongbyon, was creating quite a buzz. We didn't know if it was another cooling tower. We didn't know, what the facility was going to be. And right about the day that we saw it was when visible signs of it being a light water reactor were just starting to show.
So tell us about your tour of the facility once you left the guest house. What all did you see?
Not as much as Dr. Hecker did the week after we did. However, that makes sense. Dr. Hecker is a renowned nuclear scientist, lots of experience at Los Alamos, etc. He's the one to show the minutia of details. However, before we left, they did for the facilities. They did indicate to us that the uranium for the light water reactor was in fact being enriched at Yongbyon. This is big news, and unlike Dr. Hecker, we did not visually go inside of the building where they were doing this. However, we were told about the activities there.
All right. Nicole, let me stop you for just a second here. You are watching Asia in Review. I'm your host, David Day, and our guest this evening is Nicole Finneman of the Korea Economic Institute in Washington, D.C., and she's talking to us about her view as the first American eyes into the North Korea, if I may use the term, rebuilt nuclear program at Yongbyon. So, Nicole, if you would repeat what you said about uranium enrichment, what did they tell you that was being done?
Well, after telling us that they were building a light water reactor, which we later confirmed with our own eyes at Yongbyon, when we asked where the uranium was coming from for that light water reactor, they also indicated to us that it was coming from on site. That was confirmed beyond any doubt 1 week later when Dr. Siegfried Hecker visited and went inside the uranium enrichment facility.
Uranium coming from on-site, meaning they are enriching on-site.
Correct.
All right, and this presentation and tour of the Yongbyon nuclear facility was being conducted in Korean?
Everything is done through a translator. So we have our own two translators that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs provides us, and then the Yongbyon facility also had a translator that they provided.
Any other? I mean, what was your reaction when you found this information out to your unexpectedly?
Well, it's certainly a surprise. I don't think that had you asked me a year ago where North Korea's uranium enrichment facilities were, I would have guessed Yongbyon. Now, this is not to say that I assume that Yongbyon is the only place they're enriching uranium. There are lots of signs that they've had programs elsewhere. However, it's just not something from a strategic target standpoint I would have guessed. It makes all the sense in the world now after I've been there, however.
Okay, why does it make sense to you that it would be located at Yongbyon?
Well, this part's interesting to me. Yongbyon, as I mentioned, is a vibrant, lively, very populous community full of people who have spent many, many years, if not decades, working on North Korea's nuclear facilities. You have a base population who you know how to control and contain the information within, already living there with knowledge and expertise that would come in handy for the building of a light water reactor, for the uranium enrichment facilities, etc. Yongbyon itself is also very isolated. There are many checkpoints to get into the city, and I have strong suspicions the people of Yongbyon are not often allowed to leave, and therefore you have your sort of communication channels already readily contained.
Sure, and so it's if for our viewers, if you could picture maybe in the American equivalent, which may not be perfectly parallel because of the closed nature of the community, but it would be kind of like having doing something in the high-tech computer industry and in wanting to be based in Silicon Valley. That's where all the concentration of brain power is. The difference is this enormous security and communication wall that's been built around Yongbyon. Is that about right?
That's an excellent analogy.
What else did you see at the facility that was of interest to you?
From the outside, nothing really looks state of the art. These are facilities that that have been around for at least 6 decades, as far as the outside buildings are concerned. There was some new construction. They're bringing a rail in to the compound, which I imagine just is for transport of construction materials.
Now, Nicole, did they allow you to take any photographs or pictures while you were on this tour?
No, you're heavily watched, more so than anywhere else I've experienced in North Korea. So we were not allowed to take pictures or have our cameras with us between the guest house through the major part of downtown and into the Yongbyon facility.
All right. And did you actually have to surrender your camera at the guest house, or did you still have it on your person?
We put them in the car.
Okay. Now, what's the big picture of this visit? You go into this nuclear facility. You expect to see it dismantled. You find out that, in fact, that's not the case. That the light water reactors are being constructed, and they are, in fact, enriching uranium from on site. What do you make of this? Why would they show this to you?
Exactly. That sums it up. You immediately have to start thinking about why did the North Koreans choose to show us Yongbyon? It isn't just because we've been asking for it, because we've certainly been asking for it every year. And the answer we'll never know for certain, as we rarely do with North Korea. However, they did mention to us, now we could help them let the U.S. and the international community know what they are doing. And what they are doing in their own terms is building a peaceful nuclear energy program at Yongbyon. So by us reporting the light water reactor and the uranium enrichment production being only for the light water reactor, this is in their words, we could help convey their peaceful nuclear intentions. The light water reactor, I should mention, is 1/10 of the size that the U.S. and North Korea were cooperating on to build after the 1994 agreed framework. So, in fact, it's small, it's very experimental, and it would really, if successful, only provide electricity to the surrounding area. But that is indeed their intentions with the light water reactor.
And based on your, you've made several trips to North Korea. Do you find that there is indeed a shortage of electric power?
Oh goodness, yes. North Korea is still, although there have been many improvements, especially in Pyongyang, still sorely hurting for power. And one of the major reasons isn't the production of that power. They're working on a light water reactor, thermal power plants, electric dams and plants. But the primary problem is the electricity grid and the storage capability for North Korea to move that electricity where it's needed. So they continue to seek out localized sources of electricity.
Very, very interesting, Nicole. For our viewers, you're watching Asia in Review. I'm your host, David Day, and our guest is Nicole Finneman of the Korea Economic Institute. Really, along with its president, former ambassador Jack Pritchard, is the point person for North Korea for the Korea Economic Institute. Nicole, let's shift topics now for a moment, and let's focus a little bit on what you have observed regarding business developments within North Korea, looking towards down the road, perhaps a little bit different economy. I know that you are well aware of the Egyptian-North Korean joint venture involving the Egyptian telecommunications firm Orascom. And did you have any observations about mobile phone usage or cell phone developments in North Korea on this trip?
Absolutely. The Egyptian company Orascom Telecommunications co-formed in a 75-25% ownership with North Koreans the group Koryolink. And Koryolink is the one and only cell phone provider in North Korea. They have created 4 different networks. Now, when I visited Pyongyang in November of 2009, by that time, a mere 11 months after the cell phones had been released in January of 2009, 9 months later, there were already 50,000 cell phone users.
So the first 9 months,
entirely in Pyongyang.
Boy, that is an explosion. That is an explosion.
Isn't it? In my conversations in 2009, I learned that in order to go beyond 50,000 users, the price of the handset would likely have to go down because that was a prohibitively expensive cost for North Korean citizens to purchase. Now, a solution was found, at least to some extent, because 1 year later, 300,000 cell phones were in play in North Korea.
300,000.
In November of 2010, 300,000. And I've had that number confirmed by various sources.
Nicole, what do you know where the handset is manufactured? Is it a North Korean handset? Surely it's not Egyptian, is it?
That's a fantastic question. Unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure. I believe it might be an Egyptian hardware, but perhaps North Korea assembled. But don't quote me on that. I'm not exactly sure.
While we're talking about business and cell phones, did you have occasion to meet any Orascom executives while you were in Pyongyang?
I have, in passing, met a few Koryolink representatives. Koryolink is actually based in one of the foreigner hotels in Pyongyang, and it's an office of only about 25 employees, and it's managed by the Orascom Telecommunications counterparts. It's as I mentioned, new. Only January 2009 was just launched, and so some of the numbers, et cetera, that I received and the feedback I received about the spread and just the blowing up of cell phones in North Korea came from those conversations. Additionally, the concern that they've reached a ceiling as far as who in North Korea can afford to purchase the handset.
Did these executives from Orascom or representatives of Koryolink or any other foreign executives give you any insight into what it's like to be working and doing business in North Korea?
It's not dissimilar from other people I've met in passing over the years, and that is, it's always a shock to be stationed in Pyongyang. The Orascom officials, just like anybody else, are very limited in their mobility. They live and work in a single hotel, and while they might be technically allowed to do a great number of things. There are logistical restrictions. For example, when you can get your car must have a driver. Your driver must know where he's going. You must know where you're going. And there's certainly a lot of limitations to knowing all of that. It's not a lifestyle that many would choose. So it's frequently a short-term. Foreign businessmen tend to be in Pyongyang for very short terms.
We'll talk more about the business development that you observed in North Korea, Nicole, but I think many of our viewers might not understand the challenges that American companies have if they wish to do business in North Korea. And so let's just shift gears just for a second here, and maybe if you would explain to our viewers what it takes for an American company that wants to do business in North Korea, or is lining up to in the future do business with North Korea. What's the process involved so far as you know?
Well, first we have to recognize that there are both UN sanctions to which the U.S. Is an abider of, and there are U.S.-specific sanctions, mostly in the form of an executive order from the president, or actually both of them that I can think of have been executive orders. So you have both UN sanctions and U.S. sanctions. So the first step is to familiarize yourself with them, but that can be somewhat daunting. Now, there's certainly a lot of room to do business, even with existing sanctions, with one exception. However, the process involves getting approval from the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control. So basically, should an entity want to do business in or with North Korea, they would need, regardless of any sanctions being removed right now, they would still need Treasury OFAC approval.
So let me ask you a question. As far as your understanding of that, it doesn't really matter what the business is, whether it's frozen yogurt or manufacture of small arms. That if the business has an interest, an American business has an interest in going into North Korea, it's going to have to get approval by the U.S. Treasury Department Office of Foreign Asset Control. Is my understanding correct?
That is correct. That has been an increasing truth. Before, I believe yogurt would have been able to escape without U.S. Treasury approval. However, only in the event that you wanted to import something made in North Korea to the United States would you have needed approval prior. However, since more recent provocations from Pyongyang, and since 2009, that is correct.
Okay. Now, would you, being careful not to disclose any of the company names, would you give our audience the best knowledge that you have on the picture of the American companies that are currently applying for U.S. Treasury Department approval to sometime in the future do business with North Korea?
Well, there have been a number of brave and courageous individuals who have serious long-term vision, who have sought out Treasury OFAC approval over the last few years, mostly in the energy development sectors of North Korea. So this would be projects where you could work on hydro, wind, thermal power plants. There are also oil refining projects that are seen as the gateway to maybe someday in the future being able to work on that pipeline that would go from Russia through North Korea into South Korea. That's been a big future budget item for many years, and it would be extremely profitable. And I know a number of companies would be willing to lay the groundwork today for a chance to be part of the energy flow through Siberia and North Korea tomorrow.
So in addition to the energy sector, well, let me ask you this. do you have a feel for the number of companies in the energy sector that are currently awaiting U.S. Treasury Department approval?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't imagine many have had the patience to wait forever. So whether or not they qualify as still waiting, I'm not sure. But it would be, to my knowledge, less than 10.
Less than how many?
Companies. Less than 10.
Less than 10. Okay. Let's shift from energy to other sectors. Are there any other American business sectors that have an application into the U.S. Treasury Department, as far as you know?
Well, there are intermediary service industries. For example, a trading company or a investment banking. There are a number of, again, intermediary sectors that have previously tried and are interested in working in North Korea. But the bigger production items would be North Korea's natural resources, so extraction and mining industries in North Korea. That would be production of fabrics and textiles, and then it would be labor in the IT or sort of assembly line capacity. This, of course, would assume that all of the equipment necessary was on site to use North Korean labor. But those are sort of the major areas where people would be attracted to and are attracted to.
How many, if we take the big picture, do you have any feel for the total number of American companies that are looking for Treasury Department approval to go into North Korea in all sectors combined? I mean, are we talking about 50 companies or 150 or what?
Unfortunately, I don't know. My gut tells me that 50 would be a high number.
Okay. For our viewers, the discussion that you're watching has to do with business developments in North Korea, and on the telecommunications link with us in our Think Tech studio is Nicole Finneman of the Korea Economic Institute, and we are talking about American companies currently lining up for possible business with North Korea in the future if they can get U.S. Treasury Department approval. Nicole, I just want to kind of give the business community a little bit of hope out there. There is one Korean-American businessman who has been able to get underway in Pyongyang, and that's Mr. James Kim. Am I correct?
Indeed. I don't know if you would consider it a profit-making businessman, but Mr. James Kim has been associated with the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology that has been built now and should be ready to open if it hasn't already opened.
So Mr. Kim what is his citizenship, do you know?
He is a Korean American, to the best of my knowledge, and he has extensive experience in northern China, having created and established a private University of Science and Technology there, UST, the North Korea version is PUST, and that university exists primarily off of donors from the Christian community, and in fact its overhead is entirely run through donated time, donated teaching staff, or volunteer teaching staff from various affiliated churches, etc. And so the Pyongyang model is going to be the same. It will be run on volunteer overhead, essentially, administration and teaching, and then quite a few donations.
So the big picture is we've got a modest number of American companies seeking approval by the Office of Foreign Asset Control of the U.S. Treasury Department to ultimately to get and do business in North Korea. And maybe Mr. Kim's Pyongyang University of Science and Technology is a profit-making business, maybe it's not, but he clearly, I think, unless you correct me, Nicole, he is the first American semi-businessman in in North Korea that we know of. Is that about right?
No, but he's close, and his project is certainly the biggest. But there have been other shoe companies, etc., that have American affiliation or American citizenship within their ownership, operating in the Rosin port and other places like that.
Are you at liberty to disclose the names of those operations?
Well, luckily, it's not. I don't even remember the names. These are, again, people I meet in passing when traveling in and out of North Korea. There's only one flight a day, so you tend to be interested in who else is on it.
All right, let's go back to your own visit. We're back in Pyongyang now. You talked a little bit about the Egyptian joint venture regarding cell phones, the mobile phones, and the explosion there. Were you able to do any kind of factory visits in this recent trip?
Yes, I saw they're very proud of their Pyongyang silk mill factory. I saw the Daedong fruit farm. It's a 95% apple farm that they're also very proud of. In previous visits, I've also seen the Pyeonghwa Motor Company car factory. This is a joint venture between the North and South Koreans. And I've been to the Paektusan Construction and Architecture Academy, but I suppose that's not a factory. So I have visited a number of factories, always the ones that I've also been to the electrical wire factory. That was in 2009. So it's always factories that are of great national pride, that they're willing to show foreigners, but interesting, very interesting nonetheless.
What's the overarching point of interest that you would like to communicate to our viewers about these various factory visits? What's the takeaway from those?
Well, all of the factories that I visited to date are, definitely centrally planned, centrally run. The governing structure of the factory is handpicked in servitude to the leadership of North Korea. However, because they're factories and they're producing for some consumer, in most of the factories' cases, you do see elements of necessary marketization happening. In the instance of the silk mill, for example, they do not use 100% of the silk produced there for internal, already predestined consumption. In fact, while two of the major sources major recipients of the silk from the factory are to North Korean textile factories, they do in fact export to China and I believe Southeast Asia as well.
It occurs to me that in this day and age that North Korea ought to be very, very proud of some of its more high-tech industries that are operating there, like the SEK Animation Studio or the Korean Computer Center. Were you allowed access to anything like that, of a little more high-tech nature?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I have asked to see the profitable business side of technology. For example, there's the Korea Computer Complex, and other entities that are already involved with foreign investors in a programming capacity. However, I've not been able to see anything from the business side. I have seen, though, where the education is. So I have seen both digital libraries. This is something the North Koreans are very proud of. These very high-tech, very digital facilities, both at the Kim Tech University of Science and Technology and also the Harvard of North Korea, which is Kim Il-sung Universities. e-library or digital library.
What did you see there? What is this visual piece? What is it all about?
Well, in both cases, more so in the Kim Il-sung University Library because it is newer. It's about 2.5, 3 years newer than the Kim Tech Digital Library, which was the first. In both cases, computers, which is something that is blatantly and visibly very different from elsewhere in North Korea. So we see, I believe, over 1,000 computers in Kim Il-sung University's library. And there are a number of touchscreen monitors. There are, I believe we were told, 17,000 pieces of digital equipment at the university. No, 70,000. And it is all very, very technology, very, very driven. It has wireless in all of the rooms, smart boards, and things like that.
So you're describing Kim Il-sung University, the Harvard of North Korea. Am I correct?
Yes.
And you're talking about the latest and the greatest in terms of touchscreens, smart boards within that educational institution, which many of our educational institutions in the United States don't even have. Correct?
That's correct. They have the ability within the university limits to do video conferencing, video lecturing, all of the PowerPoints and things that we could imagine, but also doing it online. Now, the limitation being, while they have wireless connections in all of the rooms, it is only connected to an intranet, not an internet.
Okay.
And that intranet, yep, sorry.
Go ahead, finish your answer.
I was just going to say that intranet is solely for the university.
When you're touring around this university and you visited how many educational institutions on this last trip?
I've been to 3 what we would consider standard universities.
Okay, Nicole, as you're going around these universities, I mean, surely the thought must enter your mind as you're seeing all of this high-powered technology being used to educate the country's elite. I mean, surely the question must come to your own mind that, my goodness, they got to be getting ready for something to do with the outside world. And is there any? Am I right? That must have occurred to you.
It occurs every second. How can the communication be advancing at such a pace as it is in the last 2 years and still be able to be contained within the walls? Now, the North Korean regime is beyond our imagination good at containing things that we take for granted are given rights and that you can't contain. However, things are growing. To give you an example, in the early 2000s, I think through 2002, you wouldn't have seen, don't quote me on that, but I believe it's 2002, you wouldn't have seen North Koreans traveling around on bicycles or cars. And then
Wait. Let me slow you down just a second now.
Mm-hmm.
2002, you would not have seen North Koreans traveling around in bicycles or cars. Are you saying that's what you're seeing today?
It is. So the first thing to come were bicycles, and by bicycles I mean ancient fifth-hand Japanese bicycles, but they just came over in the boatloads, and everybody in North Korea. Not everybody, but so many people have bikes. All the people in Yongbyon that I saw, everybody in Pyongyang, were using bikes when they had greater distances to travel. And to think just bicycles alone, how that helped communication, how that helped one person communicate to their furthest neighbor much faster and more efficiently. And then in 2009, we have the cell phone, introduction of cell phones. Both absolutely contained. Now, you weren't allowed to bike outside of, your visa restricted area. However, it increased the communication within your sort of travel limitations significantly. And then with cell phones, you're not allowed to, it doesn't work across networks. You cannot call internationally, or you cannot even call a foreigner that's in the country. However, it has improved communication among approved channels significantly. So we're seeing, and now with the intranet, even if they manage to keep the internet wall from the internet, you've got another way of sharing files and communicating very rapidly and very quickly.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. You're watching Asia in Review. I'm your host, David Day, and our guest is Ms. Nicole Finneman from the Korea Economic Institute in Washington, D.C. Nicole, let me ask you one question that maybe you can't answer, but as you were touring these educational institutions on this trip to Pyongyang as well as others to North Korea, is there any hint that you could see of what you would call preparations to let go of this intranet and to do business with the outside world? Is there any hints there at all?
Yes and no. I wouldn't want to get anyone's hopes up about blatant movements being taken. However, again, at Kim Il-sung University, and in fact other universities, they have started things like financial colleges, new departments focusing on international finance and domestic finance and economics. They are requesting more and more outside assistance, and when they're not requesting it, they're receiving and being very receptive to outside assistance in financial training, international financial institutions, international finance, how other countries' economies work. And this is something that I would say is very new. Earlier, there was certainly a group of the population that needed to learn about how the rest of the world's economies worked. However, it was always under the auspices of we need to understand how they work so we know how to deal with them. And now it's grown to the point where it would be hard to believe that it won't affect North Korea's internal finances. It might take 20 years until the people being educated today are somewhere of influence. However, that is a new and very driven movement inside North Korea that I see.
So no question in your own mind, if you look hard enough, you can see the infrastructure for international business being slowly put into place.
Absolutely. North Korea's foreign investment laws were not written until the mid-1990s, and then they were not updated until right now, 2009 through 2010. So they had antiquated laws that they've actively been reviewing. They have been taking steps to try to make investment into their country more friendly, to provide safeguards against foreign companies being nationalized, to provide foreign companies the ability to get their profits outside of the country, etc.
Interesting. Let's very quickly. Did you see any evidence that the UN or U.S. sanctions are biting the North Koreans at all?
That is a good question, and my evidence would only be anecdotal because it's certainly not a topic you'll get a straight answer from everybody on.
So can you tell us the anecdote?
Absolutely. The first thing I would say is that we did visit Daesung Bank, which is a bank that the U.S. the UN is heavily sanctioning for previous associations with counterfeiting earlier in the 2000s, but also its potential or maybe proved associations with arms and illicit trade. Now, we visited this bank because it's one of the larger banks in Pyongyang. It is infrastructure-wise ready to handle foreign currencies and foreign investors within the country. However, due to sanctions, it's not being. And one of the things that was interesting in our meetings at the Daesung Bank is that nowhere else in our visits did I hear such strong rhetoric. Not even at Yongbyon did I hear the U.S. imperialist line touted as strongly as I did from the Daesung Bank officials. And that indicates to me this is really hurting. Can you come on? Please lift these sanctions. And in fact, they talked about the sanctions readily, that they did not deserve them, that the U.S. could easily look into their activities and see that they were clean, and that those sanctions should be lifted as soon as possible.
Nicole, I know, and I want to share with our viewing audience here that I know you are about ready to shift from this very, very significant position you've held at the Korea Economic Institute, and you are going to become a Foreign Service Officer for the U.S. Department of State. And I might add, just as a little side note, based on your knowledge of Northeast Asia and the Koreas in particular, they are going to be very, very fortunate to have you. But as you prepare to leave this very prestigious think tank in Washington, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what can you tell us about how do you see the future of North Korea developing? What's your prognosis here?
Well, I see it in two ways. In what's going to happen internally inside North Korea, and then those things that could be influenced by outside action, namely U.S. action. Internally, we're going to see North Korea continue to hold tight, hold strong. Their arms, the regime's arms are linked. They're trying to keep people in tow, and they're trying to stay firm. And that necessitated the last year's worth of provocative actions. I'm not justifying their actions by any means. I'm just saying from North Korea's perspective, going through a leadership transition, which we do not know how long that will take, it absolutely, for its own regime survival, is going to stay strong and is going to continue to be a major thorn. Now, on the other side of this transition, when we have leadership that's finally willing to take a breath, if they've survived it, we will see them begin to open up and be willing to then make movements. But they need to feel like they're in complete control first. As many people have said, that's where things might crack. Waiting for an orange or violet revolution in North Korea is a losing game, given how controlled the society has really been. But cracks up top are both possible, possibly even likely, and where things would start to fall apart. Now, regardless of what, and for those of us that follow North Korea very, very closely, though many of us didn't think that the power transition between Kim Il-sung, the now grandfather, and Kim Jong-il could possibly have been as successful as it was, and we were all betting on the wrong horse if we said that it was going to collapse in the 90s. We were wrong then, so there's certainly a lot more hesitation now, but inside North Korea things are different. People do not love Kim Jong-il as much as they love Kim Il-sung, and they're going to love Kim Jong-un, the son, infinitely less, unless they can pull a miracle or a rabbit out of their hat. And that's just happening. Communication is spreading. The outside world in tiny, tiny doses, and nothing to get too excited about, is entering North Korea. From an outsider's standpoint, if I may, including with current sanctions in place, one of the genuine pressure points that can be pushed to North Korea and can definitely alter North Korea's future would be active, positive academic and business investment and exchange within North Korea. There are a few, but only a few, U.S. governmental restrictions, namely if you can get OFAC approval and you're a business, you can move forward. On the academic side, there are very little, if any, restrictions, unless you wanted to train North Koreans to be better nuclear scientists, of course.
Nicole,
and this
we are just about out of time here, and I did want to. Would you give our viewers the connection for your six-party talks negotiation simulation? What's the website or email address for that?
Absolutely. If you are interested in participating or even hosting the six-party talk simulation, which has now been facilitated for over 2,500 people, you can visit our website at www.keia.org and click on our Flickr link, where it will direct you to more information and even photos of the simulation.
Wonderful. I will tell our audience that this is a wonderful multi-party simulation that has the benefit of teaching people about the various regional issues involved in Northeast Asia, and at a different level, the opportunity to learn more about multi-party negotiations. So if you're interested, please check out that website. Any final quick comment, Nicole?
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and for those who hold out hope on North Korea, you're not alone. That's what all of us working on North Korea do, and we do see a brighter future for sure for that country.
Thank you so much. You've been watching Asia in Review with David Day and our guest, Ms. Nicole Finneman from the Korea Economic Institute. Good night.